This week's challenge combines a bit of stats with some reporting tools, so it's quite exciting actually. So let's take a look at it. We've got fiscal months and performance percentages for two different companies, presumably. And we need to use these formulas up here to create a regression line. So initially you look at the data and you think, okay, so my y-axis is the performance percentage and my x-axis is the fiscal month, but how do I do an average of the fiscal month? That doesn't make sense as a sort of terminology. So the way that we do that is we assign a record ID position to that so that we can take an average of where they are along the x-axis, because that will go chronologically in order of the months. So that's how we can get around that basically. So we just use the record ID tool, call it X, and that's fine. We do that for each of the inputs. Then we also attach like a chart number to both of these so that we can union them together and then do all the steps, together, rather than having to do exactly the same, build the exact same workflow twice, because that would be quite tedious. So we union them together, and first of all we're going to want to know the average x and y values. So we group by our chart and we do the average of the x and the average of the performance percentage and just name them average x and average y. I find that easier just to use the same notation that they're using in the box up here to sort of keep track of how I'm following along. So then we join that back onto our original data set on the chart. So then we have those average x and y values for each of our charts. So that works nicely. And now it's time to calculate for the m value. We're going to calculate the numerator and the denominator. So that just means that for the numerator, we are taking each x value and minusing off the average x value. We're taking each y value and minusing off the average of each y value. And we're multiplying those two together. For the denominator, we're just squaring this value here. And to do a square in Alteryx, use the pow function. So we're raising this to the power 2, basically. So that's nice, but then obviously we need to sum these in order to calculate our m, so we need to use a summarize tool again for each chart and sum the numerator and denominator so that we can work out this m value being the numerator over the denominator. And now when we join that back in, we can get rid of quite a lot of unnecessary fields of the numerator and denominator and their sums, so that we're left with just the m and the average values, so we can then go ahead and work out this b value. So the b value is just the average y value minus m times by the average x value. And now we're ready to calculate our regression. So basically for each y value, each value that we're going to sort of plot on the y-axis, we need to have the m value times by each individual x value, not the average x value, and then we need to add on the b value there, and that gives us our regression line. So if we just look at all of these values here, then yeah, these are kind of looking sort of like how the output looks. They're sort of increasing gradually, so looks like we're getting something sensible, which is good. So now we're coming to creating those charts ourselves, and I know that there's a batching option inside the interactive charting tool, but I found it easier just to create these as separate things, so I used a filter tool to separate off charts 1 and 2. So I'll then go through what you do for chart 1. So in our layer 0, you could rename these, I'm just lazy. This is our line that we have. So we change the type to a line, we have our fiscal month on the x-axis, we have our regression on the y-axis. And then for our bars, then we just add a layer up here. This is now layer 1. We change it to bar, we add in our x value is fiscal month and our performance percentage is our y value. And that creates this nice chart here. So how do we get the dots on the lines? Let me show you that. That's in the layer options, and then you see our layer 0, we have show the points. If we untick that, then they go away. And if we tick that again, they come back. And that's how it is wanted to be in the output of this solution. And then I just did a few things like tidying up the axis titles because they don't have any titles in the solution, so I removed them here, and I just added on the axis lines as well, made sure that all of the lines were showing so that that's all as the solution wants it to be, basically. So I do the same for the other one, literally just kind of copy and paste and make sure that it's configured correctly, union those back together, and set them out to be horizontally next to each other using the layout tool. So just making sure that you're saying all records combined in a horizontal fashion, and you can play around with this sort of padding and that sort of thing, but I just left it at the default there. And then how do we get the performance charts title there? I thought you'd use the header tool, but I found that didn't give me the customization options that I wanted. So instead I just used a text tool, a report text tool, and attached it to the existing field, placing it above there. I could control that this is in the center, making it bold, and then to change the font size, then you have to click on this little font button, and then that looks very familiar, that font thing, font pop-up window there. And all that's left is to render it as a PowerPoint presentation using the layout field. And then that gives us, if I just open that up here, exactly what was asked for. So we haven't truncated our axes like it was done in the solution, but that's just because it's best practice not to in general with data visualization. So I hope that was nice and simple, and thank you for listening.